Hi, this is Kate Mulberger. I'm here to do my second installment of how should I quilt this? This is never an easy answer. It's more of a creative process, and I'm going to walk you through that. But I gotta tell you, I have no clue what I'm going to do with this quilt. So this is the project I'm going to be working on. It's a queen size quilt. I love it, but it would be so easy to fold this up and just put it away for a while because I really have no idea what I'm going to do yet. But I'm feeling a little bit of pressure to get started on this. My sister Crystal and I designed and pieced and appliqued this together. So I want to get started on it. So I'm going to get started. Well, we've already started. We've already basted the quilt. That's the first step. She helped me do this. You can see a little closer. We have safety pin basted our 3 layers and then put the straight pins around the outside edge. This is my preferred way of basting a quilt. You don't have to do it this way. If you're interested in seeing how I do it, I do have a video on how to baste a quilt, and I do this regardless of how small or how big the quilt is. My next step after basting, then, I do know has to be to machine quilt around the outside edge, little less than 1/4 of an inch, just to hold all of those layers nice and flat. This is especially important in a large quilt like this. You don't want to get to the end and have puckers or edges that are all ruffly. You want it to lay nice and flat. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. And hopefully, as I'm sewing around this very large quilt, I'm going to be inspired in some way to know what my next step is. I finished quilting the outside edges of the entire quilt, and all of my straight pins have been removed. So now I'm left with the task of dividing the center of this quilt up into sections so that I can then quilt those sections in a creative way. We'll see. The obvious choice here, I believe, is to quilt in the ditch on all of the black flange. You can get a little closer here. This is a loose flange. I'm going to quilt in the ditch on all of those skinny black borders. I think that will break the quilt up nicely, and I can start to tackle each section. I finished machine quilting inside all of the black flange, actually in the ditch. You can see there is a skinny black strip around the turquoise center. There is a skinny black strip around the gray square, and there is a skinny black strip around the white triangles. All of that has been anchored now, so that I know if I go and start working in that center medallion, that blue turquoise color, I'm not going to distort the gray squares or the white squares or the outside border, because they're all anchored and basted down nicely. So what I'm going to do is next is to tackle this teal center square. I'm going to go in and do in the ditch quilting. To anchor this even further, I will go in the ditch around all of these petals, all the way around, just to anchor that. I might even go in the ditch into the turquoise color as well, just to anchor it even more, make it more stable. Then I can go around each of these black units the same way, get all of the gray, that way all the gray triangles will be anchored. And then I'm going to do the same thing in the white triangles, go around each of these separate units, and the same thing in the black border, going around each of those units and the cornerstones as well. I feel like after I get all of that finished, I will definitely have done a good job stabilizing this quilt, and then I'm free to do free motion quilting, more intricate ruler work, and be more creative. I finished all of the in the ditch straight line quilting, and as you can see, the quilt is looking like it has been anchored really well. I have it on the back. We're looking at the back of the quilt because you can see the stitching a little better back here. The front of the quilt, of course, it's all in the ditch, so you can't really see how much quilting I've done so far. So I'll flip this over and we'll talk about what I'm going to do to finish this up. Because I've quilted evenly over the entire quilt, doing the in the ditch quilting, now I'm free to pick any section I want and start doing some more intricate quilting where I can be creative. What I like to do, I'm not an artist, so I have to doodle a little bit to decide how I want to quilt specific areas. I'm going to focus first on all of these Lucy Boston blocks. So I took a picture of one of these blocks and some of these smaller units, and I started to doodle. I printed them off, first of all, in black and white so that I could doodle on top of them the quilting design that I feel like I'm choosing is this one. And the way I did this was I like to be able to quilt the unit without stopping and starting too many times. This particular design I'm able to do all without stopping at all until I'm finished. So I think I started right here, and I'm going to use, this is just with pencil, but I am going to use rulers on my quilt, and I came in here to this point, then I'll use rulers to make that nice curve, come back out here, and just continue the whole way around this unit. When I get over here to the other side where I started, then I'll come in here and do my free motion, and I'll be finished with that unit and I can cut my thread. Then I'll use that same design on the larger Lucy Boston block. And again, I took a picture. There's my picture in color, and I printed it in black and white so that I could see a better contrast. I'll do those 4 8 petals the same way I did the smaller unit. So then all I had to do when I came out here, I did a straight line across here and here and went the whole way around the block. When I get back over here, then I can do a curved line here, inside, outside, inside, outside. So I'm quilting that whole big unit without stopping again. What I decided I did not want to do was go around each petal individually in the ditch. You just wouldn't see that quilting. So that's why I opted to do some designs that would go on top of these units, and they'll really pop out nicely. So I need to get busy and get some of those done. Well, it took some time, but I'm finally ready to report back in on the quilting designs that I've done in the Lucy Boston blocks. I'm going to zoom in on some of the blocks that show the quilting nicely. It shows up on all the blocks, but as you can see, the center of this block really shows off that quilting design that I showed you on paper. The black and the purple are the designs that I did in all of the smaller units. But especially on the gray, it doesn't show up as much as the black fabric. That's where it's really, really gonna pop. And then I have another block down here that I think shows off the quilting in the outside petals too, where I did the straight lines and then the curved lines. I hope I'm not making you dizzy. I'm going to show you one more. There's the center unit, and then if I expand, you can see the entire block. And on the outside gray petals, you can see the stitching. On the busier fabrics, your quilting is just not going to show up as much as it does on the solid fabrics. So I have completed all of those. Now I have to start to focus on another area. And I think what I'm going to do is focus on that center medallion, the background fabric. The center medallion itself was done the same way as the smaller units. And I think I'm going to cross hatch. I love cross hatching, the traditional look of that. But if you'll notice, my fabric in the background has a pattern on the fabric. So I won't have to mark my cross hatching. I can just follow the lines in the fabric, and then that piece of it will be finished too. I finished the cross hatching and I really, really like it. I used a slightly darker thread so that the quilting would show up on that light fabric, and I kind of like the effect of that. So that's done. My next step is to work on these gray triangles, and the idea that I'm thinking about using is I think you can see the white chalk, vertical chalk marks on here. They're every 2 inches apart. I just drew a light chalk mark. I'm going to quilt that, and I think what I'm going to do is go a 1/4 inch away on either side of the chalk mark, which would give me a 1/2 inch between the 2 lines. So there'll be a double line here and here. And then if I get brave enough, I might make circles in that 1/2 inch space. So I'm going to play with this and I'll be back. I finished the double row of stitching, horizontal here, vertically up there. I finished all of the gray triangles. I did not put circles in between these 2 lines. I tried and it just didn't show up on that gray fabric. It's kind of got a busy print to it. So I think I'll save that for another location where it will show up a little better. I'm ready now to move on to these large white triangles. They each have 3 little Lucy Boston blocks on them. I took a picture of this so that I could doodle and figure out exactly what I want to do with that. And here's my black and white printout of the photo. I'm going to mimic some of the applique that I have done around some of the Lucy Boston blocks. In this particular one, it's a black applique behind the block. So I'm going to use that same design and quilt on these red lines. And then in between the red lines in the white space, I'm just going to do meander as a filler for that. So that's going to take me a little bit of time to get all 4 triangles done. And then I'll be ready to tackle the final border. I finished a couple of the white triangles and I'm really happy with how they turned out. As I mentioned, I quilted around each of the Lucy Boston blocks with a little bit of a border on there, and even the little ones. I came up with a very easy way to make that design, and I'm going to show you a quick demo on how I did that. But you can see here, then I free motion quilted in all of the back space, and I really like how this turned out. So I'm just going to give you a quick demo on how to make that paper pattern. Okay, to get this quilting design, I just cut a 8.5 by 8.5 inch square of freezer paper. To actually draw it, I folded it in half twice, and then using any kind of a curve, one of your curved rulers or even a small cup, you can get nice curves there. Draw the line, cut it out, and when you open it up, you have a nice simple design for quilting. I'm going to take this over to my block, and I'm just going to center it the best I can onto that design. When I'm happy with the placement, I have the shiny side of the freezer paper down toward the fabric. Then I can just take my iron that pattern down. I want it to be nice and snug so that it doesn't shift. Iron all the way around. And then I can just take any kind, a marker, chalk marker. I like to use the water soluble markers. But then I can just trace that design on there. I'm just going to do a couple of these for you, but I obviously would go the whole way around. But when I'm all finished, I can lift that, and I'm not sure how well the blue lines are showing up on the camera, but they are there, and I can use that pattern then for my quilting design. Okay, I finished quilting in all of the white triangles. You can see I did echo a design on here for each of the Lucy Boston blocks, both big and small. My blue lines are still need to be washed out. The white right behind the unit is puffed out a little bit, and then I did some free motion quilting in the background to flatten that out, so it puts a little bit more emphasis on each unit. I also did a 1/4 inch in right inside the black border, and that's all finished. That part of the quilt is finished. I'm now looking toward the border and this blue scallop. I think what I'm going to do is just echo that scalloped edge maybe twice and see how that looks. And then I'm ready to tackle the black background of the last border. So I did finish the blue scallop, and I did do 2 echoes of stitching. This was very, very easy. I just picked 2 rulers that had a different curve on them. So the first time I went around each scallop, I did this ruler, and then I went all the way around the quilt. And then the second time around, I did this ruler, which gave me a more shallow curve. And I think it looks great. I'm very happy with that. I'm getting excited because I'm closing in on the end here. Let me show you the drawing I came up with for my black border. So I'm thinking I needed to divide the space up just a little bit. So I'm going to do a curve from the tip of this small Lucy block over to the larger Lucy, and then I'll echo that. And then I just drew some 1-inch lines to finish that outer edge of the black border. I think what I will do in here is do a meandering, maybe with a gray thread if I get brave. It's very hard to see your stitching when you use black thread on black fabric. You lose track of where you've been. So I want to pick a thread color that's a little bit off from the black. And out here, I might go ahead and use some of my teal and purple and green threads just to highlight those stripes a little bit. We'll see. I'll play around with it and check back. After a little bit of experimenting, this is what I came up with. I did the stripes that I had planned for that outside edge with black, along with 2 echoes of black thread, and then a third echo of the medium gray thread, and then of course the free motion all around the little Lucy's. And this quilt is finished. I decided on a faux piped binding for the edge. I love to do these. They're very, very simple. And I think that really sets off and pulls in the colors that I have on the scallop and then of course in the interior of the quilt as well. But this is my final result and I'm very happy with it. I will probably try to post another video and show you how to do this faux pipe binding because it's very popular and everyone seems to really enjoy. Just adds a little bit of spice to that binding. Thank you for watching, and as always, check in my blog, Let Your Quilt Shine at blogspot.com, and see what else I'm up to. This is definitely a quilt that I am so glad I didn't throw in the bottom of my closet. I'm glad I kept at it, and it is now finished, and I can't wait to give it to my dear friends.